Okay, Siman Kuf Pei Aleph Din Mayim Achronim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Mayim Achronim Chayva. To wash your hands after the meal before benching, says the Mechaber, is a Chayva, is an obligation. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Aleph, Sif Cotton Aleph, Mayim Achronim. Hatam, the reason why one washes one's hands after the meal before benching is Mishum Shayodayim Mezuhomois Hein. The hands are dirty. Min ha'achila, they're soiled from touching the food. Psules lebracha, and therefore you can't make a bracha. V'samchu Chazal akra the v'hiskadashtem v'yisim kadoshim. On that pasuk, Chazal darshan v'hiskadashtem elu mayim rishonim. That's referring to washing before the meal for bread. Sheki yikatru dem kodim achila letarim b'tumah. Kamotion is boil el b'simen kufnen ches. That's mayim rishonim, washing your hands before the meal, when you eat bread. V'yisim kadoshim elu mayim achronim. That is a reference to mayim achronim. V'afilu l'misha eina mevarech ba'atzmai. Even if someone doesn't himself bench, el shemeh lot says mipi ha'mevarech, but someone else is benching and he's being motzi him. V'yosim is that. More than that, afilu k'she'ein yod mezuhom is klal min achila. Even if a person is very careful how he ate with a knife and fork, his hands are not dirty. Gam kein chivu chazal b'netilus mayim achronim. The obligation of Mayim Achronim extends to that person as well. The concern is that he may have touched melach sedomis, which was a type of salt from Sodom, which is a very potent salt. The bechol suda halanim melach. At every meal we have salt. The little bit of melach sedomis, this very potent, strong salt, is mixed in, that it can blind the eyes. If you touch, your hands have got a bit of salt on it, and you touch your eyes, then it could be very dangerous. And he might touch his eyes. Even nowadays, we don't actually have this particular type of salt. You've got to be choshesh for other very strong salts. We may not have melech sedomis, but we have similar other salts. Chayva, so the Mechaber calls it an obligation. If you only have a small amount of water, you should minimize the amount you use for mayim rishonim to wash your hands for the bread in the first place, to make sure you have a bit of water left over for mayim achronim. And if you only have an exact amount for mayim rishonim, you're so mutzumtzum, you've only got a small amount for mayim rishonim, heim koidmim, that comes first, mayim rishonim comes first. Afilu mishan is the tomid of mayim achronim. So mayim rishonim is certainly more important. If you've only got a small amount of water, enough for mayim rishonim, that takes priority. Nowadays, the ein motzu melach sodomis beinin, because nowadays the whole reason is melach sodomis, and we don't actually have this nowadays, and therefore ein chayva kol kach mayim rishonim. It's not as big an obligation as mayim rishonim. Good. Yesh omrim demitchila ein lo lechol elim kein yodeh sheyesh lo gam mayim achronim. There are those who say that you can't even wash and begin the meal if you know that you haven't got mayim achronim. However, it can't be stricter than the obligation of mayim rishonim to hainu, but the fun of arba milin or la'achrav mil. We said previously in the halachas of mayim rishonim that if you're journeying, you have to wait the time it takes to do arba mil, which we translated to mean 72 minutes. And behind you, or if you're stationary, then 1 mil, which is 18 minutes. Within that radius, within that sort of orbit, you need to wait for mayim rishonim, and therefore with mayim achronim it should not be more stricter than that. If you can't find water within that time frame, within 72 minutes, there is just no water. You're allowed to eat. That if you haven't got water within 72 minutes, if you're traveling, you're on the M1 and there's no service station for a while, then you're allowed to have your sandwich, like we discussed then. And so too, certainly, mayim achronim should not be stricter than that. And any time afterwards, you get to a service station or you get to some water, you can wash your hands then. Okay, that's the end of Sif Aleph. Sif Beis. Mayim achronim ein noitlin al gabi karka. when you wash your hands with Mayim Achronim, you shouldn't spill it onto the ground. Ela b'kli, rather it should be spilled into a kli. Ruach rosh asher aleim, because it attracts some sort of bad ruach, some sort of bad spirit, and therefore you should not pour it onto the ground. V'im ein lo kli, and if a person doesn't have a kli to pour the Mayim Achronim into it, noitel al gabi eitzim dakim, pour it onto thin pieces of wood, bohen, because it will be absorbed into the wood and it won't sort of spill onto the ground where people are going to walk. It says Mishnah Berurah Cotton Gimel, Ela b'kli, you should pour Mayim Achronim into a kli, v'lo yischeiv yodav b'teicha kli l'rochtzam. You shouldn't just submerge your hands into a kli, which has already got water in it, l'rochtzam, ela yishbech hamayim al yodav sheyerid l'teicha kli. Rather, what it means is that you pour water onto your hands and that should collect into a kli. So what's the problem? Why can't you spill it in a place where people will walk? There's a little danger in walking over a place where Mayim Achronim has been spilled. But if people are not walking in that particular area, then it's not a problem to spill out Mayim Achronim there. And therefore, you can actually pour the Mayim Achronim under the table, because people don't walk under the table, therefore it's not a place of not a chashash, and even though you may move the table at some point, by the time you do that, the water will have dried up and it's long gone. Okay, if you haven't got a kli, so you said then you can pour the Mayim Achronim into sort of thin pieces of wood. It will be absorbed in that. It says Mishnah Berurah, "T'chashiyesh lo kli yishbechem dafka b'toicha kli v'chuyetzi bohen k'mei avonim dakim, like little pebbles, v'koitzim and thorns v'chol ki agavna shenivloim b'hem hamayim ve'enim miskabsim l'makom echad v'yesh meikilin little afal gabe ritzpa im ein lo kli little b'soicho." Other people are making, not only can you spill it onto the ground, but you can spill it, if there's no kli around, you can spill it onto the ground. Don't spill it in a place where people are going to walk. Okay, Gimel. Ein noitlin b'chamin shayad nichvas bohen. Don't use water which is going to be too hot, where the hand will get burnt, literally. Pirush mevabin, it swells the hands, and it won't do the job of removing the dirt from the hands. B'chamin, with hot water. Aval paishrin, lukewarm water. Dahainu she'ein hayad soledes bohen muta. The Rashal says no, you should have to use cold water. If all you've got is lukewarm water, don't be machmir, and that's okay. Nichvis bohem, the Mechaber said, don't use water which is so hot don't use water which is so hot because your hands will swell, etc. So he says, lav dafka, that his mom is going to get scolded by that. No one's going to use water which is so boiling hot that you're going to burn your hands. The hands sort of just retracts a little bit from him. And the measure of that is that it's any where the stomach of a baby will get burned. That's the general shir. So it means hot water, but not scalding hot water. Shemafafin merachkin esedayim. The concern is if you use water which is too hot, it will soften the skin. Or mavliin poinas azua masatavshil, and that will sort of absorb all the dirt and the salt, etc. of the food, and that's bad news. Venerally the chamish and istanu mutter little ben. If it's warm water which is cooled down, that would be mutter to use. Okay, we'll leave it there. But what have we seen today? That the Mechaber says that Mayim Achronim is a chayva, and we shouldn't spill the water into a place where people are going to walk. You spill it into a kli, and then you pour it away, or under the table where people are not going to walk, etc., or into thin pieces of wood where it will sort of absorb into that. And don't use water which is boiling hot, but using warm water is okay. And the Marshal says, Dafka, you should use cold water. Okay, we'll leave it there.